Welcome to the Live, Love, Leave a Legacy podcast, episode 2, season 1, with your host, that's me, Jerry Morales. Welcome, everybody, and I'm so glad that you would even click on that link again and take another chance on me. But I'm having a lot of fun, Never thought I'd be doing this, so for me, I'm just having a blast doing this too, and thinking about you. As I'm thinking about these podcasts, I'm thinking about you, and I don't know who you are, but I know that if you're listening, it's because God has something for you. And so, man, I even forgot I'm looking down, and I should be looking up at you like this. And so I'm telling you, I'm I'm learning as I go, but I know one thing's for sure: I'm gonna have fun while I do it. And so if you're stuck around, you're on the second one, you might as well like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone you love and want. Then just leave a little encouragement here and there. But last episode we talked about living and how important it is to live. And just because you wake up every day don't mean you're living, man. You could just be existing, doing this monotonous, the Groundhog Day, thing where you get up, do the same thing, come home, and just go to bed and do the same thing over and over again. That's existing. That is not living. And the goal of this podcast is to encourage you to live. And the greatest thing the greatest gift you can give while you're living is real love. Now, love is such a word that's, Hollywood, novelas, music, genres of music, they've given us all these definitions of what love looks like and what love should be like. And with social media now, and we sometimes really forget what love really is. And we kind of love based on our experience with that word love and what it's done. A lot of us have had our hearts broken. We've been backstabbed. You've been, people have turned their back on you that you never thought would, and all that stuff comes into play when it comes to love. And it interferes with us being able to trust. And trust is the basis of real love. You got to trust the person you're loving. And at the end of the day, too, the kind of love that we want to promote is a love that no matter who the other person is, you just love them. But Pastor, you don't know what they've done to me. I know I don't. I don't know what they've done to you. But, if you're a believer, or if you're curious about faith in God, and you go to, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the Bible, Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he's not talking to he's not addressing a marriage seminar. He's not even addressing couples. He's addressing a church, the church there in Corinth. And Corinth was one of those cities that, it was like a Vegas, man. They had a lot of stuff going on, and not all of it was healthy. And, and in there he says, I'm going to show you the most excellent way. And then he goes in and starts talking about what love is according to God. And this love is so important because it is so pure. It is so, fulfilling, because it's a love that's not based on the other person. It's a love based on the fact of just loving from a pure motive, from a pure heart. And none of us here we don't all, without God, we don't have a pure heart, because the Bible even says that our hearts are wicked above all things. So, but with God, though, and through God, we're able to love people in ways that really is just, you can only do with God in your heart. Now, let me give you an example. Like, the first episode, I talked a little bit about my mom. Now, I'm going to share a little bit about my dad. Now, my dad was a Vietnam veteran, grew up in Mexico too, came over here and worked in the fields, and dropped out of school at 8th grade to buy himself a car. Was a hardworking man, a provider, amazing. That guy, between him and my mom, I have such an amazing work ethic. Like, I don't mind work. Work don't scare me, and I'm grateful for that. We've always had a roof over our head, food on the table, clothes on our back. My dad never complained about work. Every day I'd get up and go do his thing, and he would do it knowing that he had a family to provide for. Now, he didn't always do it the right way, but we'll talk about that in the future down the road. But for the most part, my dad just was a worker, and he loved to work on cars, and but he wasn't a very, I want to say, a really loving man in a sense. By like, he always told us he loved us, or he would, I know when I was a little kid, he would hold me a lot and spend time with me. But as I got older, it became a little harder because, having a conversation about love between a father and son is not always easy when you weren't raised to do it. And so I remember one time I was at Fresno State. I was a freshman. And I don't know what, excuse me, I don't know what started this thought in my head, but I started wondering, why come my dad don't tell me he loves me? I was like, man, I'm the first in my family to, graduate from high school, first in my family to be it was a miracle just being accepted at Fresno State. And I don't know if it's because I heard another dad talk to his son and say, I love you, son, or I'm proud of you, son. I would have loved to have heard that more growing up, but I didn't, It's not that I questioned that my dad loved me. I knew he loved me. I just didn't hear that he loved me. And I was arguing, like, man, how come my dad don't tell me he loves me? And all of a sudden, his voice came from out of the blue and said, how come you don't tell him you love him? And I'm like, wait a minute here. I'm the son. He's the dad. He should be the one to tell me he loves me. No, how come you don't tell him you love him? Well, no, he should be the one to tell me they love me because he's the dad and I'm the son. I'm the one that's doing some cool stuff. And I was like going back and forth with myself, and there was nobody else in the room. But it was this thought that was just going inside my heart, my mind, my soul. There was this conflict and back and forth. No, you tell him. No, he should tell me. And then finally I got the nerve, and I had not so much the nerve, but I got the courage to call home. Fine, I'll tell him I love him. And I remember I called home, and back then we didn't have cell phones, so this was pre-cell phone days. And my mom picks up, and, I asked her if I can talk to my dad. And then I remember my dad gets on the phone, man. He's just like, it was quiet. Like all of a sudden, I couldn't even talk. And I'm like, oh, man, and then out of the blue, I said, I love you, Dad. And then I got awkwardly quiet again. And it was like, he was just like, but then all of a sudden, these words came out of his mouth. And he said, I love you too. And then it got awkwardly silent again, quiet. And we're like, next thing you know, I was like, okay, bye. And we hung up because it was so awkward. But I tell you what, something happened that day. All of a sudden, something was broken and like between him and me. All of a sudden, every time I go home, it was so much easier for me to even begin by saying, I love you, Dad. To a point where I was determined to hug that man, kiss that man, and just love him, because the kind of love I wanted, I gave him. And then guess what? He gave it right back. Like it wasn't like he didn't complain or get mad. I think he enjoyed it too. Whoa. We got some difficulty here, man. But he enjoyed it too. And I think he was looking forward to it. I think he liked it just as much as I did. And as you can tell, I'm still learning this thing, but I'm not going to stop because I'm on a flow right here. And I love this, where I'm at right now with this conversation. So I'm going to fix this thing while I'm talking to you about this. And, my dad, he really, I think he liked getting the hugs from me, and I love getting them back. And it was all mushy or nothing, but it was cool, man. It was healthy, and it was good because then I can tell that, it encouraged him, and it definitely encouraged me, because growing up, my dad never, Anna, right? My dad never came out to watch me play any sport. I know he took me to practice once, I can remember, but it's only because, he was with one of his homeboys, and, his son was on the team too, so it was like one of those things. And then we ended up going to the boardwalk after that. And it was cool but it was awkward because I wasn't used to my dad doing stuff like that with me. And I'm not going to let this stop me. This is just like, no, this is too good. And so, I didn't have a lot of times where I could really remember my dad really, hearing him cheer my name or encourage me like that. And I know I missed that as a kid. I did. I missed it. And I know I needed it. And so I knew how important it was, when I became a dad, how important it was to be a part of my kid's life. But I learned that by starting with my dad, is to love my dad and really, just create something between him and me that we didn't have. But it started with me having to take that step of faith of doing it. And of course, you might be thinking about your relationship with people around you that you wish you had too, but how about if it starts with us? This is where that challenge is. That maverick way is, you don't got to wait. As you make you go and you learn about what real love is and you share that real love. You remember, you only get one shot at this, man. If you're married, love that man, love that woman like you should, with this love that's just so abundant inside of you. Now, here's what I had to learn. Nobody taught my dad how to love. my grandma and grandpa, they were rough, man. And, one day I remember I told my dad, I said, hey, how comes, growing up, my mom was a disciplinarian. She's the one that disciplined us all the time, for the most part. And that's a whole nother podcast. I'll tell you later. But, and my dad honestly told me, he goes, because I was afraid. I was afraid that I would hit you like my parents hit me, and they would hit me with whatever they get their hands on. In other words, they would beat them. And with things that you shouldn't, hit your kid. Plus, they weren't very loving either. And I remember visiting my grandma in Reynosa, and, she was cold. I mean, she loved on us. She played with us, but I could tell this. She had this coldness about her, this hardness about her. And so I started learning more and understanding more of my dad, because I had to realize that you can't give what you don't got. My dad wasn't given that, and then he didn't learn it growing up. And I know Vietnam had a big thing to do with it. Going to Vietnam, I'm sure he experienced things and saw things that no human should have to see or endure or do. But that's what war does. And so I know that was a part of his story too, and it's a part of also what kind of gave him the definition of how he looked at life too, how he defined life. And so, he had a lot of unlearning to do. And I'll tell you what, it's just so important that we get to know the people that we expect things from. I had to learn to appreciate my dad for who he was. Now, I wish I would have had that feeling a lot sooner, so I could have been more intentional. But I am glad that we had a loving relationship. I am glad that my brothers got to enjoy a better version of my dad, because my dad did become a better version. He did grow, and he did get a lot better. And he was never perfect. None of us are, but I'm so proud of the man that he allowed himself to be. And I'm so I love that my little brothers got to enjoy him a lot more than I did, and I'm okay with that, because that's life. We have to understand it. You're the oldest in your family. You might be able to say, I understand, because you look at how your younger siblings may have had a little bit better, and they did, because as the family grows and matures, and it's it should get better, right? And we're the guinea pigs. If you're the oldest, well, you're the guinea pig, man, and that's just it comes with the territory, right? But it was so important that for me, because I wanted to feel that, and I'm so glad that God gave me the courage to tell my dad I love him, because then what happened after is just that all of a sudden our relationship changed and got better. Now fast forward, I remember, when she was my girlfriend at the time, Alma, when she got pregnant, it was such something that really challenged me. And when she told me she was pregnant, it kind of caught me like, whoa, because I wasn't ready to be a dad. And I don't think you could ever really be ready to be a dad. But the fact of the matter is, I was going to be a dad. And the whole thing is that it wasn't that I was going to be a dad. In a sense, I was already a dad, because there was a child that was, which ended up being Aleli, my baby, my oldest. And, she was already being formed in her mother's womb. And I had to make a decision. What kind of dad am I going to be now? And it was something that really challenged me again, like to really think, what am I going to do? Now, I used to have a dream where I was in prison, and a lady came to visit me, and she had a little baby bouncing on her lap, and I didn't recognize her. I didn't recognize the baby, but in the dream she said, well, I just want you to meet your son. And he was already like a year old or something. I was like, man. And so for a while I had this lie in my head saying that's probably how I was going to raise my kids, just through a glass or through pen and paper, that I wasn't going to be a present father. And, I didn't want to be that dad. And at that time I was drinking a lot and using drugs and not making really good choices. I was out there in the streets, and I was living or trying to be someone that I was never created to be. And I was never no hardcore gangster like that, but I was intrigued by that lifestyle. I was attracted to that lifestyle. And, so it was a part of my life. And it was something that really, got me when she told me she was, and then as she, started to show more and more, I said, what in the world am I going to do? And I know I wanted to change, but at the same time, I didn't have the courage to change. I was trying, just like I told my mom I'm trying to stop drinking. When you're trying, you're really telling the whole world is I just don't have the courage to do it now. And I didn't have the courage to stop, because there was a a hole in my heart. I was still hurt. I had stuff that happened to me when I was a kid, I'm just, that's where I was. I was using drugs and alcohol to heal, to not heal because it didn't heal, but to help me ignore wounds I didn't want to feel and think about stuff I didn't want to think about. And so I would self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. And I remember after my daughter was born, I still was struggling with alcohol and drugs, and not so much drugs anymore, but more alcohol. But I remember one time she woke up in the middle of the night, and she was just a little baby, and I told her, I'll get her. And I remember I got my baby, and I sat in the corner, and I looked down, and she looked up at me, and she smiled with this smile that was just so innocent and so pure. And I felt like my hands were so dirty, and I felt like, these stained hands are going to hurt this little girl if I don't change. And that moment, I challenged myself. And I told my baby there audibly, I told her, look, baby, number one, I'm always going to be there. Number two, you're never going to visit me in jail, because my dad went to jail, and I hated visiting my dad in jail. And number three, I'm always going to be there, because as much as I appreciated my dad, I did miss him, that he wasn't a part of my life growing up as far as in sports and school and stuff. I told my dad I'm going to be there. Those are three things I promised her. And, she gave me the motivation to change. But I had to make the decision to follow through with what I said. And so it wasn't just motivation. It was really a declaration, because I loved this baby so much that I was willing to do whatever, because I didn't want to pass on my pain to her. Okay? Key thing here, I didn't want to pass on my pain to her. Like my dad passed on his pain to me. Like his dad passed on his pain to him. In other words, there's these generational things that are going on that we have to address. And if you don't have the courage to address those things by fighting those things, whether it's love, whether it's addiction, whether it's hurt, unforgiveness, pain, whatever it may be, you need to address those things, or you're going to pass on those pains to your kids, to the next generation. And then life's already hard enough. I mean, I had it was hard for me growing up, and I'm here having to fight my dad's battles, because now I don't want to say it, I'm going to say this gently, because I love and I respect my dad, but he never had the courage to face some of his giants that he had to face in his life. And therefore, I'm having to fight those giants that he was supposed to fight. And I didn't want my kids fighting my fights. They're going to have enough fights on their own. And all of us. No, nobody's exempt. You're going to have to fight in this life. And if you got a little baby, that baby's going to grow up, and they're going to have to fight, not so much with these, but with their heart, with their choices, with their mind, with their life, what they're going to choose to do. And it's a real fight that you and I both know, because we've engaged in this fight called life. And I'm so proud of you for listening to this podcast, because if you're still listening to me, then you understand that this fight is real and it's ugly. And the fight isn't always fair. Believe me, it's not, because if you believe in God, then you have to understand that there's an adversary, and he's the devil, and he's out to steal, kill, and destroy. He doesn't want you to make it. He doesn't want you to change. He doesn't want you to really love with a genuine love that we can only get from God. Why? Because that love destroys the lies of the enemy. That love destroys generational curses. That love destroys this thing that says I can't, and it gives you the strength to say you can. And it gives you the purpose to do and to follow through with those things that you want to change, because love from God is a power that when it flows through our lives, it changes not only our lives, but the lives around us. Let me tell you why. Because as you get better, then the things around you get better. Okay? I really need you to understand how important this is, because my daughter had a dad, a present dad, an active dad. I hardly missed anything that she had going on. I hardly missed any of her games, any of her special moments. And it's been like that with all my kids after that. Why? Because I wanted to be that dad that I wish I had. Now, here's another thing I want you to get at. If you're a parent, or you're going to be a parent one day, listen to this. I heard a wise man once say that sometimes we work so hard to give our kids the things we wish we would have had when we were kids, when what they really need is the wisdom that we wish we would have had at that age. Right? Let me give you an example. John Maxwell was on a plane to Brazil. And behind the seat pocket was a success magazine. And on the cover it said 25 books that every leader should read. And as he went through the magazine, by the end of the magazine, he realized that he had read 18 of those 25 books before he even graduated from high school. The other 7 he hadn't read because they hadn't been written, and one of them was his. Can you believe that? John Maxwell, before he was a graduate from high school, had already read these 18 books that all these leaders should read. And he said, and he made a point, was his leadership, his ability to lead or to live the life that he lived was intentional. It wasn't by accident. His parents raised him like that, to be an intentional and a person who can make a difference. So his father, one day he said he came home from school and he overheard his friends talking about them getting some allowances for doing chores around the house. And so John Maxwell thought it would be kind of cool to talk to his dad about, hey, Dad, it would be kind of cool to get an allowance for, doing stuff around the house, like take out the garbage or do stuff like that. And his dad looked at him like, you mean you want me to pay you to do something that you should do as a part of the family already? And he's like, no, what do you think? I'm trying to raise you or invest in you to be a garbage man or something like that? He goes, no. He goes, how about this? I'll pay you to read. I will pay you to read. I'll pick the books, though. Now, even John Maxwell said it's by no coincidence that, that his sister was running a hospital at an early age and that his brother was a millionaire at an early age. It wasn't by accident. They were raised to be difference makers. They were raised to be leaders. And his dad knew what he was doing when he was giving them those books to read. Now, while I was watching that video, my son was next to me. And I told him, hey, buddy, sorry. I never raised you like that. But I tell you what, my grandkids are going to have a better shot than you and me at being even better leaders. But we learn and we grow. I want to raise my kid. I want my kids to be difference makers. I want my kids to grow up knowing that they can make a difference in this world, and they are making a difference because they were raised like that by their mom and dad. And so we need to continue with that. But there's a motivation. John Maxwell's dad loved him so much, he intentionally ensured that he had the education and was exposed to the right things so that he can grow to make a difference. Now, let me tell you something. I want you to know, when you love and intentionally love, you can, it makes a difference. Let me tell you, let me give you an example. My dad was an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic. My grandfather and my great-grandfather, they had their struggles too, right? And it's real. They had real struggles with addiction or with the decisions they made as men. Now, my son is the only Morales that I know of, then we can track generations that have not had a sip of alcohol at the age of 21. And I even took him to Vegas for his 21st birthday. And you might say, well, how would you take your son to Vegas on his 21st birthday? To go watch the Raiders play. They won that game, by the way, okay? For those of you haters who are like, man, why would you? They won. But I took them with this innocence, right? We went to church too, Victory Outreach Las Vegas. Went to the game after. Got a tour of the game. Had a great time. We had a great time. But I didn't have to worry about all that other stuff. We didn't go for all the wrong reasons. We went and had a blessed time. We had a great time. And why? Because none of my 3 kids have ever seen their dad drunk. They never had to come visit me in jail. I've never even heard my kids cuss. Why? Because they've never heard their dad cuss. Yeah, right. Yeah, I know you're probably going, what? No, I haven't. They've never heard me. You know why? Because I didn't even want that vocabulary to continue. If you know me, we grew up together. We're in high school together. I had a filthy mouth. My dad had a vulgar mouth, And so, but just like that, God got in the picture. And I'm going to give you the legacy part. I'm going to talk to you a bit about my dad and what he did. That has also inspired me to be the man that I am today. Okay, so important for you to understand that your ability to allow yourself to be loved by God creates this power within you to be able to love others to the point where you are making generational changes because you love yourself enough to be loved by God and then to love others through the love of God. Now, I'm going to continue on this theme of love because love is such an important part of who I am. And if you know me, then you know I love, and I love you. I'm the motivation behind this podcast is because I love you. I don't know you, but I love you because I've been loved by people I never thought I'd be loved by, and I'm so grateful for them. But it's all because of God in them too. And so, this next episode, we're going to talk about legacy and how important legacy is in this live, love, and leave a legacy thing. And so Please, if you like this video, subscribe, share it with somebody else. But until the next video, be blessed, be blessed, be brave, be bold, but most importantly, be you. God bless you. I love you, and see you on the next one.